Great. Welcome to this evening's webinar. Thank you for letting me know you couldn't hear. I'm Russell Davis. I'm here on behalf of Fertility Network UK. And I'm going to babble for a couple of minutes just as people are connecting and joining to the webinar, and to check the technology is working. And thankfully, I was doing a little babbling bit and I realised that the microphone wasn't working. So hopefully the audio will be kicking into for you in a little bit. I won't launch into the meat of the material until I know everyone can hear. There should be a chat box to your right, and if you just type in there to say hi, or make sure you can hear me. If you can hear me, just say hi, I can hear you. The chat box is completely private, only I can see the messages there, so it's completely anonymous. And it's a way to ask questions throughout the webinar as well. So if you can hear me, just say hi, you can hear me. If you can't hear me, say that as well. Hopefully people can hear me. Great. People are saying they can hear me now. So thank you for saying you couldn't hear me. That's what this little bit of the webinar is all about, making sure the technology is working and people can hear. And you found the chat box, so that's where you can ask questions at any point during the webinar. I should come to questions maybe at the end. I should glance over during it if I can, to take them along, but don't wait till the end. If you think of a question, just throw it in to the chat box, and I say only I can see those, so it's completely anonymous. No one else can see who's on this webinar. It is completely anonymous. So it's a few minutes past, and just give it a couple more minutes before I launch in, and then we should get things going so people can make sure people connect. And sometimes these webinars take a little time for people to connect on there. I don't want people to miss out on the beginning. So thank you for those who are here, and thank you for joining us. And we're going to be here about 45 minutes, 50 minutes, depending on the number of questions and everything else. And I'm going to take you through some material. And you don't need to make notes. So one of the things you don't need to make notes. I'm going to send you a kind of summary in an email, so you can just enjoy and have an experience as you listen tonight. So if you're a note taker, please resist the temptation and just have an experience as I speak, and you'll get a really detailed document with the meat of what I'm sharing with you this evening. So I think most people are connected now, and the technology is working. So we shall dive in. We shall start. So I'm Russell Davis. I'm a fertility cognitive therapist and coach, and I'm here on behalf of Fertility Network UK, sharing some tools and approaches to turbocharge your relationship. I know that fertility can cause a strain on the best of relationships. My wife and I had a 10-year experience of infertility, involving both female fertility and then male fertility. So we've seen infertility from almost every angle, including secondary fertility. So we kind of beam around the block a little bit when it comes to fertility. And we can look back and know, if we knew then what we know now, our journey would not have been a 10-year journey. We did end up getting pregnant naturally against all odds. ICSI was our only option when it came to kind of treatments, but actually we ended up conceiving naturally against all odds. And we can see how much our mind, our thinking, our emotions, our beliefs played a massive role in our journey and affected our biology, as well as just our experience of the journey. But also, I'm so thankful for some of the things we learned along the journey. I wouldn't wish a 10-year fertility journey upon anyone, but I'm really thankful for the things I learned about myself, my wife, relationships, all sorts of things. The psychology of our minds, led me to changing my career, doing all sorts of things, and now helping other people on their journey. So I'm really thankful for some of the things I learned, but particularly when it comes to relationships. And I'm going to take you through some of the details of that this evening. Some of the things I've learned that really helped us have a whole different way of communicating for the better. And I share this story a few times on Facebook and things like that. It's one of the examples when it comes to relationships. A common thing in couples can be a common bone of contention, can be driving. And my wife used to not like my driving. At times, she still doesn't like my driving. But the way we handle it, the way we deal with it, is so different to the way it used to be. When it used to be, is my wife would make comments about my driving. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think I'm a boy racer. I'm thinking I'm a pretty safe driver, very safe driver. But there are times my wife would say, "Oh, you're driving too fast," or "You're driving too close to the car in front." And all I'd hear is criticism about my driving. And what I really hear was unnecessary criticism about my driving, because I generally believed we were perfectly safe. And when I heard criticism, I got defensive. And driving is just an example. There are plenty of other examples in the relationship. And a lot of my clients that I work with, it's quite common where it can be a male-female thing, which I'll come on to a bit later. But I heard criticism and I got defensive. And that's what happens if we hear criticism. We tend to get defensive. We tend to protect our position. I justify why I shouldn't be criticized. I'll be telling her why, well, there's nothing wrong with my driving. It's perfectly safe. And that led to kind of a less than kind of loving exchange. And over time, as we began to understand more about the psychology of our mind, what creates our experience and relationships and communication, and this was all in the midst of our fertility kind of journey. And what really struck me, 8 years into our journey, my wife said to me, she felt alone on the journey. And that really shocked me. Well, it kind of shocked me, it kind of didn't, because even before that, even outside of fertility, my wife often would say that she felt quite alone in our relationship, but often I say in my head. When it came to our fertility journey, I genuinely believed that I was kind of hands-on. I came to all the appointments, we talked about things. But she said she felt alone. She said she felt ununited. She said she had no idea how I felt about things. She said she didn't feel understood by me. And that really shocked me to the core, because this was 8 years into our journey. It was a lot of strain on us and our relationship, and it was almost kind of make or break at that point, because we were dealing with a lot of stuff individually and together, and she felt very isolated. We didn't blame each other for our situation, but clearly in some way the stress of it and the experience of it was not making us stronger and closer. That I thought it was, but clearly that wasn't her experience. And going back to the driving, it's a classic example where our communication just wasn't connecting us. And I come on to share the real gems of information and understanding that completely changed that. And the big thing is the way we communicate generally, in not just in relationships, in life. We can be quite lazy with our language. In a conversation, people can tend to be listening to think about what to say next, how to respond to the person speaking, rather than really listening to what that person is trying to communicate. In a conversation, again, we can often get into defending our position, putting our case forward, rather than really seeking to understand each other. An argument can be a valid form of communication if we remember what we're arguing for. We're fighting for clarification. We're fighting to get back into unity. But often an argument tends to be just trying to win. And an argument is an extreme form of a conversation, where even a general conversation, we're just not really seeking to really hear and understand the other person. And that's what this evening is about, to really find out how we can do that for each other, so we can feel really more understood, feel more loved, feel more connected. For me, that emotional connection is the glue that binds us together. And that's what was missing in our relationship. And that's what I began to put in. And that's what this process I'm going to outline over the next half an hour or so helps you put into place. You know, a conversation can often almost inadvertently lead to annoyance and frustration, and our partner getting angry with us, or getting defensive, or feeling criticized, when often we don't mean that. And there can be a male-female factor in this as well. There are stereotypes about men and women, but there are differences between men and women. Well, men and male and female energy, we all have both within us. Men have male and female energy, women have male and female energy. Perhaps women have more female energy, men have more male energy, and that's what attracts us. It's the polarity between masculine energy and feminine energy. It causes the attraction. But sometimes masculine energy doesn't know what to do with feminine energy. And it gets scared of it, or it tries to fix it, trying to change it. It's not really hearing it. Women often dying out to be seen, to be felt, to be heard. Women are crying out for their men to hold a container for them, to know whatever they're feeling is okay. And so often my wife, I would think it was unnecessary, her emotion was unnecessary, and try and fix it, try to change it, try to calm her down, try to make her feel better. Or if I thought her experience was based on a misunderstanding, I would try and put it right rather than really listen to what she's feeling. Or if I felt she was criticizing me, I wouldn't hear her anger or frustration. I was just trying to make her realize how she's wrong, and I'm not like that. So often men do try to fix a situation rather than really hear what's going on. Often men communicate transactionally, communicate information as and when required. Women communicate to be understood. Often women are dying to be understood by their men, but also to understand their man. I didn't share my emotions for a number of reasons. One is I thought I need to be the strong one in this journey. I didn't want to put more burden onto my wife. But actually, it's what she wanted. She wanted to understand my struggles. So she felt she wasn't the only one with the struggles. She wanted to understand my struggles so we could feel each other in this journey, understand each other in this journey. And there are other reasons why I didn't share my emotions, which we haven't got time for to cover tonight, but I had a very unhealthy relationship with emotions. I thought those things, mainly because I had stuff from childhood emotions, I just kind of buried. I kept a very busy mind because it was safer in my head than to share something and be vulnerable, because as a kid I felt hurt, let down, disappointed every time I reached out. There was nothing there to meet me, to love me, support me in it. But that's a separate conversation. But the nub of this conversation is about how can we connect at that emotional level? How can we understand each other? How can we feel understood? That enables us to feel more loved and united. And unfortunately, there's studies that show fertility can cause impacts on relationships. It's kind of obvious, and there's studies that show that. There's also studies that show that where women report kind of marital strain, it impacts their fertility. So unfortunately, it can become a vicious circle. And I believe what I'm going to share tonight can break that vicious circle and actually get it spinning the other way. So it's about moving on from a conversation which can inadvertently be fueled by judgment and lack of understanding and listening, hurt, criticism, defensiveness. All that stuff can come up when we didn't expect it or think it's necessary, but it just comes up because often, as I said, we're quite lazy in our language. I want to share a process with you this evening that creates a clean container for this. That creates a container where you feel safe to share. Creates a container where there's a conscious choice or decision that we know why we're communicating at this moment, to understand each other. And there's some clear steps to this. There's some really clear guidelines, which as a man, again, I'm maybe being sexist or stereotyping, but I personally found it really helpful to say, okay, do X, Y, or Z. I need to be trained into this stuff because it was quite alien to me. And I found it incredibly helpful. Now it's more kind of conversational, it's more second nature. Don't get me wrong, I don't get it right all the time. We don't get it right all the time, but it's far, far better than it was. Infinitely better than it was. So let's dive in. What do I mean by this process? I'm going to call it dialoguing versus having a conversation. A dialoguing process. For me, a dialoguing process is consciously choosing to listen to each other for the intent to understand. Now, the first step of this process is where someone wants to share something. Someone who wants to be understood. It could be the man, it could be the woman, it could be a same-sex relationship. It doesn't matter what the dynamic is. If you want to be understood, is there something you're feeling, something going on within you? You want to share it. You want to be heard, understood in this situation, whatever the subject is. So someone's got something they want to share. They want to say something. What they want the other person to hear. So this is step one, the sharing. Now, step one in the sharing, there's some guidelines to this. Often when we share something, even share how we feel, inadvertently, we're quite lazy with our language, and what we say can be loaded with judgments or evaluations, which can often unnecessarily kick off the other person to be more defensive. So my wife saying, you're driving too close to the car in front. That's a judgment. She's judging that I'm driving too close. That's her judgment. It's not fact, because everyone has their own perception of a situation. Often when we share something, especially an emotion, we blame people or situations for our feelings. We don't own the feeling. So you might say, when you did this, it made me feel really angry. When you did this, you hurt me. And we're quite blamey, and we do it, we're not trying to hurt another person. Inadvertently, subconsciously, we kind of think those things do make us feel something, because something happens, we have an emotional reaction. But it's not the situation that creates that emotional response, it's our thinking about it. Nothing can make us feel anything. So the first step in the sharing is keeping judgment out of it. And the second thing is owning your feeling of it. So keeping judgment out of it means focusing on observations. So the driving example, instead of you're driving too close to the car in front, that's a judgment, it's an evaluation, which I can inadvertently hear as a criticism. I know it's maybe not meant as a criticism, but it may trigger something in me that means I hear it as a criticism. So the cleaner we make our language, the less likely someone's going to be triggered by it. So instead of saying you're driving too close to the car in front, it could be, when I see the distance between us and the next car. It sounds a bit alien, but maybe there's a simpler way of explaining it or describing it than those particular words. But can you see it's taking the judgment out of it? Or saying when you ignore me, well, ignoring is kind of a judgment. It could be when we sit for an evening and you don't say a word to me. Subtly different. It's just an observation. There's no judgment in it. So instead of when you're driving too close to the car in front, is when I see how close we are to the car in front of us. When I see how close we are, that's just an observation. It's not saying it's too close. It's just when I see how close we are to the car in front. So keeping judgment out of it, focus on our observation. Or when I think about this situation, I feel. Own the feeling, I feel. So here's the thing with the driving thing. My wife used to say that you're driving too close to the car in front. Full stop. What she was actually wanting to communicate was that she's feeling scared. So the more we became aware of this, she started to communicate that. Instead of you're driving too close to the car in front, she'll just say, I'm scared. And should own the feeling. It was not your driving's making me scared. It's I'm feeling scared. So in the sharing, step one in this process, the sharing, is keeping it clean, keeping judgment and evaluation out of it, owning the feeling. When we do that, the other person's less likely to be triggered. They're more likely to really hear what you're communicating. So step one is the sharing. And then the rest of the steps focuses on the listener. They're guidelines for the listener to really help them stay focused on listening for what that person is really communicating. And this was so powerful to me because I would just listen to try and fix things. Doesn't help. My wife didn't want me to fix her problems unless she specifically asked. So step 2 of this process is for the listener to mirror what they've heard. So step 2 is mirroring. And the listener will just play back what they think they've heard in their own words, maybe. So you can say, so what I hear is X. Now again, this sounds quite noddy-ish, this sounds quite just kind of false, but trust me, go through the steps, step by step. I'm going to email them to you, and it'll become more conversational. But it's really important to understand the purpose of each step. It sounds a bit silly to do it in this way, but it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. Trust me, and I promise you, if you do this, you will see the difference. So step 2, mirroring. So what I hear you say is this: you're feeling angry. And this can feel like you're making it worse, because my wife is angry about a situation and she says, oh, I'm really angry. And she's expressing this anger. And I'm hearing it, I'm listening. And I say, so you're feeling angry about this? Of course I'm feeling angry. Inadvertently, it could kind of make it worse, but bear with it. Bear with it. What you're doing is creating a container for this emotion, for this feeling, just to be expressed. Holding a container for it without any judgment or criticism. So that person can be felt, can be heard, can be seen. So the mirroring is just checking what you heard, but also the mirroring is maybe drawing anything else out, anything else. So I hear is you're angry about this situation. Is there anything else? And this could be really hard if the person's angry with you and they're just chewing a wasp about something you said or done or whatever it may be. And is there anything else? Make it a real safe container that anything can go into it. Say to them, is there anything else? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. It's helping them check in with themselves. Is there anything else about this situation, about this thing they want to share? So the mirroring is just playing back what you heard. So what I heard is this: you're angry. You may use your own words, you may use the same words back, but it just checks. It just starts you from the same, making sure you're on the same page. And then draw out anything else. So anything else you want to say? Anything else on this you want me to hear? Draw it out. Don't be scared of it. Often men are scared of emotion. They're women's emotion because in the past they tried to fix it. It doesn't work. They want to make it better because they don't want their loved one to feel pain or distress. But it's holding that container to let it come out without any judgment or criticism. It's showing that person you can express anything in this space. I will love you in it. You're not bad or wrong for feeling it. Let it out. I can take it. So the mirroring is playing back, checking what you've heard, maybe using their language and drawing anything else out. The second step after mirroring is validating. This is really, really important. Validating is letting the other person know it's okay to feel that. They're not wrong for feeling it. They're not bad for feeling it. Often my wife might express an emotion and I'm thinking, oh, she's got the wrong end of the stick. She's getting us out of proportion or whatever it may be. Validating is recognizing we all live in our own model of the world. We all have our own perception of reality caused by thought in that moment. So take the driving. My wife has her own perception of reality in that moment, which is different to mine. Every person on this planet has their own perception of reality in any given moment. It's unique to them. And we may have some commonalities between a lot of us, but they're still unique to us. We all live our own model of the world. That's their reality in that moment. So if my wife's upset about something, that's her reality in that moment. Me trying to tell her something different, it's not going to serve it. Me telling her it's unnecessary or just to calm down, it's not going to wash. That's her reality in that moment. So the third step, the validate step, is helping them realize they're okay for feeling that. So it's saying things like, I can see how you can feel that way. I can see why you might get that and see it that way and feel that way. I get you may be experiencing that. So it's understanding their experience, their train of thoughts. You may not agree with it, but understand how it's a possibility. So my wife's saying, I feel scared in the car. It's getting into her head and realizing, okay, she's feeling scared. I may disagree that I don't think it's necessary, but it's validating that's her experience in that moment. She's not bad or wrong for feeling it. And just acknowledge it. Just acknowledge it. So often we try to fix it, change it, tell them they're wrong for feeling it, or we feel bad for our emotions. We want to create a safe space where emotions and feelings can be shared and not judged. So they feel bad for feeling it. So the validation is creating that reassurance they're okay for feeling it. They're not wrong for feeling it, not bad for feeling it. And the fourth step is like the crown jewels. Fourth step is empathy. The fourth step is now taking it this process a little bit deeper. So we've mirrored back their words, our understanding of their words. We've validated it's okay to feel that way. Not that they need our validation, but it's just reassuring, because often we don't get that. We get we hear someone's emotion, we try to fix it and change it. Inadvertently, what they can hear is they're bad or wrong for feeling it. So we're just reassuring it's okay to feel that. And the fourth step is this empathy step, is taking it a little bit deeper, because if my wife said, I feel angry about the situation, we might think what we know what that means. But there's surface structure of a word and a deep structure of a word. What does angry really mean? Angry to one person in a particular situation might be very different to someone else. There was a situation where we both said we felt angry about this particular situation, and we thought we were on the same page. We thought we were having a similar experience. But when we unpacked it, looked at the deeper structure of the experience we're having, my wife was really livid. But in my experience, my model of the world, I was just kind of mildly pissed off compared to her experience. So she said angry. When I understood how she felt, I'd say she was livid. I said I was angry. When she understood how I felt, she said, oh, no, you're more mildly pissed off. It's just understanding what we mean by those words. So the empathy is playing back what you think they're experiencing, so they can truly know you understand. So often, again, we're quite lazy in our language. If someone says, oh, I feel this, oh, I'm really excited about this, and you can say, yeah, I understand. You don't have the power to say that, because we need to demonstrate we understand. And the mirroring back is the first stage of that, but often we're just playing back their words. The empathy stage is really showing you understand. By really understanding what they mean by angry, upset, whatever it may be, lonely, wherever the feeling is they're sharing. And we can do that in a number of ways. To be really help them articulate how they're experiencing it. Tell me more about that feeling of loneliness. How strong is it? Say on a scale of 10. What's it like? Get them to explain a little bit more, so you can start to understand in their model of the world what that experience is like. And then you can start to think about perhaps times in your life you felt the same way. Think of examples in your life where you felt that kind of loneliness or that kind of anger. And the other person may say, yes, that's exactly it, but 10 times stronger. They may say, no, it's nothing like that. It's like this. Because we think we have a lot of words in our English language, but they're still finite with a finite number of words. The experience underneath those words is infinite. So my feeling of fear is going to be different to everyone else's. Someone feels really understood when the other person has demonstrated they understand. And the purpose of the empathy stage is to get the sharer to be able to say, yes, you understand. For the listener to demonstrate they understand, asking the questions, exploring it, playing back their experiences they think are similar. So you can make sure you really understand you're on the same page. That you both understand what they mean by the words behind their feelings, behind their experience. And when you get to that stage of the sharer saying, yeah, you understand, that's the place to get to. And this whole dialoguing process is about getting to that place, is getting to understanding. If you've got big decisions to make on your journey, I recommend you go through this process first, talk about how each other feels about the decision or about the situation. Because when you get that common understanding, not that you have to feel the same, what I mean common understanding is you both understanding how each other feels about the situation. You find the actual decision making is a little easier. Because you feel more united and connected in the journey, in the decision, in the situation. Now, how we actually do this in practice, what I recommend, so I'm going to send you all this kind of process in writing so you can see it laid out, step-by-step process. My challenge would be for you to sit down with each other, even once a day. A 30-day challenge can transform a relationship, and do it for, say, 10 minutes. Because this can be quite challenging for some people in a way, about expressing their emotions for the first time or listening in this way. I know personally that when my wife wants to talk, sometimes you think, oh, I haven't got time for this. But it used to take a long, long time because I was no good at listening. It made the situation worse. She got more frustrated, and it just became a long, drawn-out, painful experience at times. But having these kind of instructions really helped it be more a quality conversation, more targeted, more laser-focused. And it's much quicker. And to practice this, I really encourage you to follow this process and just agree just for 10 minutes, talk about something. What's going on in your day? How do you feel about your day? How do you feel? It could be something big or small, just as a way of connecting, understanding each other. And one person could be the sharer, the other person be the listener. And you can swap if you want. Or one night do one day, next day do the other person. Share what's going on. I can't believe there's any couple that hasn't got something they can share, even about the relationship. Judgments you have about the other person, withholds, things you haven't shared about the other person, things that frustrate you about that person. This helps you share those things in a really clean way. So you're not blaming, not criticizing them. It's just where you are right now. So you feel understood. And the more you do it, the more it becomes kind of conversational. The more you find you do it just more naturally. My wife caught onto this quicker than me because she used to share while driving, I feel scared. The thing is, I wasn't validating that experience. I judged it as unnecessary. I wasn't doing this kind of listening. She had shared, she'd kept her sharing part clean. But I wasn't validating it. I judged it as unnecessary. I say to her, that's unnecessary, perfectly safe. So she felt misunderstood. She felt ignored while feeling scared. What does that mean? She feels even more scared. The moment I kind of really caught on to this, understood it, and really saw the power of it, when she said I felt scared, I could just see, without going through the step-by-step process, it become more intuitive, kind of more conversational. I just stopped criticizing it, stopped judging it. I just saw someone I loved feeling scared. So I just find myself slowing down automatically. And the more that happened, well, the less she felt scared because she knew that if she could articulate it, I would respond positively. That's one of the byproducts of this process of just generally feel closer, you feel more united. You feel more loved and supported and safer with each other. So I really challenge you to explore this. And it sounds clunky to look at the instructions of how to communicate, but I promise you, if you were to do this, just practice it once a day for 30 days, transform any relationship. Any relationship. I had a client, a couple that they were getting to the stage where actually he'd said he called time on the relationship. She'd booked a weekend away for them to try and turn the relationship around. But the day before they were going to go, he's saying, time out, can't do this anymore. She called me in a panic. What do I do? So I talked a little bit this to her. I said, okay, just play a game for the weekend. Maybe he's open to playing this game. Whenever one of you says something, have the other person just to check what they heard. Play back what they heard, mirror what they heard. Now, I didn't have time to take them through this whole process, and I didn't want to make it too onerous for them because they're going away for the weekend. I want to make it something quick, almost light-hearted and just easy to do. But throughout the weekend, just 10 minutes practicing over 2 days wasn't going to be enough for them. Something they can do almost all the time. And they made a joke of it almost. So when one say, would you like a cup of tea? The other one would say, are you asking them a cup of tea? And that's a crazy example, but it just showed they were just checking each other because that was innocuous. Do you want a cup of tea? But actually, a lot of the time on the weekend when someone said something, and they said, are you saying this? When they mirrored it, the other person said, no, you misunderstood what I mean. I mean this. They got to the stage where in their relationship, they were taking so much personally, they became so much more defensive. They were almost listening out that defensiveness. They weren't hearing what the other person was communicating. They weren't hearing beyond the words and beyond their own need to protect their position or defend themselves. They weren't hearing beyond any inadvertent criticism to hear the pain or the emotion the person was communicating. The person was crying out to be understood. And just the stage of the sharing and the mirroring, keeping the sharing clean, but just the mirroring in that weekend transformed that relationship. And they're still together now. Because they realized it wasn't the other person's fault. They both felt like a victim, blaming the other person for their situation. They realized it was their thinking about the situation, what they were hearing, their perception, what the other person was saying. They bypassed their own perception, their own thinking, their own judgments, and really checked what the other person was saying. They realized it wasn't what they thought it was. They realized there was more love and compassion for each other than they ever experienced. So this 4-step process is profoundly simple in a way, but profoundly impactful. I just want to check if there are any questions. Someone saying they can't hear. I'm hoping other people can. No one else has said that. If you can't hear, I'm sure the recording is going to be okay because no one else has said they can't. So I'm assuming other people can hear. And just in this pause, if you have got any questions what I've shared so far, just type them in now. Or any questions, if you think there's a bit of a side tangent, just put them in. There's always a relevancy somewhere. Are people saying they can hear? So I can continue because people can hear. If you can't, it must be a local problem. If you can't hear me saying this. So I shall continue anyway, because I'm sure the recording will be fine. So this is the 4-step process: sharing, keeping the sharing clean. Observation, owning the feeling. Second step is the listener mirroring what they've heard, drawing anything else out, not being scared of it, drawing it out, starting to build that container that's a safe place. The third step is the validation, reassuring that person they're not bad or wrong for feeling that. You can get why they might be feeling that. The 4th step is the empathy, to demonstrate you really understand their experience. Not what you think their experience is, not what you think, what they mean by the words, to really understand their experience behind the words, so they can say, yeah, you understand. So that's, in essence, the 4-step process, which I'll email to you. If there's any questions, yeah, just type them now. I should take any questions on this or any aspects of communication and relationships or any aspects of the mind and fertility. I'm happy to open to anything around, yeah, our mind and the fertility and communication and our experience, all that kind of stuff. Just going to pause for a moment to see any questions that can come in, because there's a little bit of delay on me speaking and you hearing, and that's purposeful. That's the way this system works, to make sure you have a good quality experience and there's less kind of freezing and juddering and stuff like that. So I'm just going to pause for a moment to see if any questions are coming in. So sharing, mirroring, validate, and empathy. And so they often can be a male-female thing, can exaggerate the differences, particularly times of stress. And I think this process can really help us connect and let go of our personal stuff in our head and our stories and our maleness, our femaleness, whatever it may be, and just communicate as two souls. One comment is, it's the first webinar they've attended. It's been really insightful and helpful. I'm glad it has. So yeah, there'll be more of these. We're glad that Fertility Network UK are getting these webinars going again. So there'll be a lot more of these. I'm personally looking to do one a month for Fertility Network UK. So I'm hoping this will be one of many. So I'm glad you're here to share this and be part of it. Our questions come in. We're just starting out on our first IVF cycle and lots of big decisions. Any advice on how to tackle this? It's a great question, how to tackle big decisions. And you're so right. On this journey, you start to explore things you'd never considered to have to explore. And it can be really big decisions. I can relate to that, whether we go for IVF, then it became, no, IVF's not going to work, it'd be ICSI. There's all sorts of decisions around that, whether it's kind of how much you want, ethical or moral or financial, and there's all sorts of stuff this can throw up that most couples don't have to consider. And they can be quite big decisions. How can we work through these decisions? Well, as I said, first step, the first thing I recommend is doing this process on that decision. So you can say, when I think about going for IVF, whatever the thing is, the decision to think about it. When I think about starting another cycle, when I think about stopping this journey, wherever it may be, when I think about X, I feel ... Just the first step of the process, you're sharing. And what I recommend is you both write that down. Do some writing on it. I personally found that really helpful because it helped me connect to my feelings. I said earlier that I was quite distant to my feelings, and just writing it down just helped me just connect to something deeper. And having my wife write it down was an interesting process as well, because it helped me read it, knowing I'm reading it, I'm listening, kind of listening as I'm reading, listening for the feeling. What is she really communicating here? I couldn't interrupt when I was reading it. I found it really helpful almost to hear her if she wrote it down. I found it really helpful to communicate how I felt about it when I wrote it down, because I said, when I think about having IVF, I feel ... I knew I was focusing on feelings. And often when we say I feel, again, we're lazy with our language. We say I feel, but often what we share after that word is not a feeling, it's actually a judgment. For example, if you say, I feel ignored, well, that's not actually a feeling, it's a judgment. You judge someone's ignoring you. The feeling may be lonely. I feel scared is a feeling. I feel criticized. That's not a feeling. You're judging someone's criticizing you. The feeling may be angry. See, again, it's keeping the language clean. And for me, writing it down helped me focus on feelings. And then I say that's getting the unity. Not to say you've got to both feel the same, just so you understand where each other's at in this decision, how each other feels about the decision. Even before you talk about actually what you do in the decision, It's how you feel about it. For me, that's a great way of starting to explore the decision. So you both feel heard and understood before you start talking about the practicalities or how you think and everything else. Another thing about a decision is, it sounds a bit blasé, but with any decision, often it's easier than we think. We have two guidance mechanisms within us. One is our thinking, kind of logical, cognitive thinking, that looks for the options and analyzes this, that, and the other, and often wrestles with the decision, because often it's scared of making the wrong decision. So our cognitive thinking is often contaminated by fear. Our soul, our instinct, our intuition, our inner wisdom, whatever you want to call it, knows what we want. Our soul knows whatever happens, we're going to be okay. So it's not so contaminated by fear. Our soul knows what we want to do if we could act with or without fear. Following your soul, following your instinct, following your wisdom, this little voice within, is often drowned out by this brass band of logical, cognitive, fearful thinking. But your soul is this little soft voice within that we hear in those moments of quiet. When we hear it, it's quite clear, but often we ignore it. Sometimes we don't even like the decision, because sometimes it doesn't feel good. As a species, we're quite addicted to feeling comfortable. But following your instinct, following your intuition, following your soul, sometimes doesn't feel good. It might mean maybe having a difficult conversation with a friend. So it may not feel good, it may feel scary, it may feel coming out of your comfort zone, but it feels right. It feels right. The little voice within is always kind. It's often shrouded in common sense. So when it comes to the decision, for me, it's just getting a sense, what does your soul say? And often we're trying to work too hard to get to clarity on a situation, when actually the best thing you do maybe is just go for a walk and forget about it. And just see what comes up from something deeper within your soul. And it's either a hell yes or a hell no. It's what feels right, being a hell yes or a hell no. They may feel freaking scary, but follow your soul. It's like driving in a thick fog. Sometimes you can only see a few feet in front of you. And the unknown, the future, can be really scary, but it feels like the right thing. Our analytical thinking wants to know we're going to be okay. Our analytical thinking wants to know the path ahead is going to be fine, and we're going to be okay. But it thinks our okayness is dependent on certain situations or circumstances being in a particular way. Your soul knows you're going to be okay whatever happens. Your soul knows you're going to be okay whatever happens. So I'd say two things, come back to decisions. One is getting a sense of what your soul feels. What you feel is the right thing. And sharing through this dialoguing process how you feel about it. I think through those two means, one is it keeps you both feeling connected as you work through the decision, but also being grounded to what you personally feel you think or feel your soul thinks is the right decision for you. It keeps fear out of the decision. It's fear that often makes decisions hard. The question could ask me is, what would you do if you could act with or without fear? What would you do if you could act with or without fear? What feels like a hell yes or hell no? So it's quite a long answer to the question, but I think it's a brilliant question. I can almost do a whole kind of evening on decisions and stuff like that, and things that contaminate our decisions. But I thought it was a great question, so thank you for asking that. Any other questions? I'm struggling with positivity on our very long journey, 6 years so far. Any suggestions? Well, the first thing to say is, nothing can predict the future, not even your thinking, not even doctors. Doctors are great at diagnosis. They can work out what's going on in your body at this point in time, the point of the test. They're not very good at prognosis because no one can predict the future, not even a doctor. Nothing can predict the future, not even your thinking. So the first thing is to be aware of the past doesn't have to dictate the future. Nothing can predict the future, not even the past. You know, we were 10 years. Anything can happen. We got pregnant against all odds, naturally. 1 in a billion chance we were told it could happen, naturally. But it did. We weren't even trying at the time because we were told there's no point trying. So the first thing is to say that yeah, anything can happen and nothing can predict the future. And often what stops us being positive is the stories we're telling ourselves. Fear, worry, anxiety. It's all a misuse of imagination. It's the stories we're telling ourselves. Nothing can predict the future. And the thing about positivity, again, I could do a whole talk on positivity is, I think positive thinking is overrated. Sometimes we think we need to be more positive, but positive thinking is overrated. Positive thinking often is trying to combat fear. I need to be more positive, more positive. We're trying to change our thinking to be more positive. The more we understand the nature of a thought, whether it's positive or negative, it's just a thought, it's not truth. It can't predict the future. It doesn't know anything about your situation. It's our perception of reality in this moment. The less we care whether we're feeling positive or negative, we tend to feel more positive naturally. It's like in our nature, if you think of little toddlers, toddlers are our purest form of self as a human being. They're less contaminated by all the fearful, negative thinking we can pick up through childhood, through the education system, through the playground, all the society. Toddlers just know they're going to be okay whatever happens. Toddlers don't try and pep themselves up to be more positive. Sometimes they feel down. They don't care the fact they're feeling down. They have a tantrum. They just feel it. They don't care whether they're happy or sad. They don't try and change it. They don't try and fix it. They don't try and manage this stuff at all. They're just in it. But more often than not, they're content. They're at peace. They have innate well-being. That's how we're designed to be. If we get some negative thinking, that's not who we are. We're the observer of all that thinking. And thinking comes and thinking goes like a cloud. And this is kind of like a model of your brain. We get a load of thinking. That thinking could be positive, it could be negative, but it's just thought. And left its own devices, it just settles. When we have clarity and perspective, we have innate well-being. We know we're going to be okay whatever happens. We don't need positive thinking. We need clarity. We need a calm mind. That's everything you need. And we tend to think, oh, I've got negative thinking right now. What do I do to fix that? How do I change that? But you're just putting more energy into the system. Just allow it, knowing it's thought. It's not truth, it's not reality. When you're feeling down, just in some la-la land story in your head, it'll pass. Just allow it. The more we understand where experience is coming from, we don't have to be scared of it. It'll move on. So don't worry if you're not positive enough or being too negative. Both are just thoughts. They'll move through. They'll move through. Again, it's a great subject maybe for another evening, another webinar about state of mind and positive and negative thinking. Because I think there's a lot of misconceptions around that. A lot of people worrying that they're not positive enough. So thank you for that question. Any other questions? Just going to pause when I'm seeing the questions come in. Quite conscious of the time. We've got a few more minutes. I'd like to stop at 9 because I said it'd be an hour and I don't want to honour that timing. But any other questions before we pause, before we end? Just say that if you haven't heard of Fertility Network UK, I encourage you to check out their website. Just Google Fertility Network UK. For those of you in the States, it's the equivalent to Resolve. It's the largest or fertility support charity here in the UK, and they've got some great resources, support form and things like that, which are very useful. If you want to know more about my work, you can go to thefertilemind.net, thefertilemind.net, and you can contact me via the website for any other questions, or if I can help you in any way. Just as we close, one final question I shall take is, how do I stop blaming myself? It's a big subject. I'll touch on it now, but maybe it's another subject for another webinar. How do I stop blaming myself? Good question. What is blame? Blame is judgment. Blame is accusation. Blame is non-acceptance. Blame is thinking you're in a bad place or the wrong place. And if you're different, or the situation was different, you'll be better or be happier. It's needing things to be different. Blame is non-acceptance. Blame is lack of acceptance. Acceptance of what is. Now, acceptance does not mean giving up. Acceptance doesn't mean things are never going to change. Acceptance is allowing what is in this moment, knowing it has no bearing on the future. Acceptance is knowing you're okay in this moment. In this moment. This moment, any moment exists. Blame is telling yourself some kind of story that you're making life worse than it should be or could be. Well, life is what it is right now. Nothing can change that. And the more we allow ourselves to be in this moment and let go of the stories and the judgment and the criticism, the more we find everything we need in this moment to thrive in this moment. It's no one's fault. It just is what it is right now. We don't need to be any different, believe it or not. And the more we find that place of acceptance, it's a place of peace without giving up. It's knowing you're okay in this moment. That life, with or without children, is just different. Believe it or not, one is not better than the other. If we think children makes us happy, happier, then it presupposes that everyone with children are very content and happier than people without children. It's not true. It doesn't work that way. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have children, but it's knowing you don't need it. And that's, again, it's another whole subject, but that's where I lead my clients to know they're going to be okay whatever happens. And the blame just melts away. Because it's not your fault. Circumstances just happen. We don't choose our circumstances. But the meaning we take from those circumstances is our thinking. And the meaning we take, the thinking, tells us these stories that lead to all sorts of experiences, whether it's fear, anger, blame. You know, I didn't have blame. I wouldn't blame myself. I was angry though. I blamed God. I blamed life. I blamed the universe.